welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the very exciting panel discussion. I hope all of you have had your lunch and are doing good. Moving on to our next discussion, which is a very, very important one for the afternoon, which is actually the CMO panel. And the topic of the entire discussion is going to be on rethinking branding, unleash your brand power through digital platforms to enhance customer experience. Now, as we near the end of the second COVID-19 wave, with most of our end customers being indoors and in lockdown and also in self isolation, we have been in fact writing a new future. This has important implications for marketers trying to build lasting relationships with their customers on the whole. So, granular monitoring of data and trends in consumer behavior has always been important to planning. Given the unprecedented nature of the pandemic and the profound changes it is actually causing, we believe that harnessing imagination may be just as critical. Marketers will need to think hard and differently about what consumers in the next normal will think, feel, say, and do. And to kickstart this entire panel, we've got an amazing lineup of speakers, starting up with Miss Neha Modgil. She is the COO, Global Design Head, and UX Mentor for TECHVED Consulting. Hi, Neha. Good afternoon.
Sorry, didn't realize I was. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon to everyone.
Great. Next up is Ms. Sheena Kapoor. She is the head of marketing for Edelweiss Financial Services. Hi, Sheena. Good afternoon.
Hi everyone, good afternoon.
Uh,
Thank you
up
for
next, up next is Mr. Ishan Bose. He's the chief marketing officer for Credit B in India. Hi, Ishan.
Hi, Marcus. Good afternoon, everyone.
Up next is Ms. Sonia Notani. She's the chief marketing officer for India First Life Insurance. Good afternoon, Ms. Sonia.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And finally, our moderator for the afternoon to spearhead the entire discussion in the rocking and in the right manner, Ms. Chetna Mittal. She is the marketing specialist and consultant to take this discussion ahead. Over to you, Chetna.
Thank you, Marcus, and good afternoon, everybody. How are you all doing? A very, very warm welcome to all. Uh, in the last 60 seconds, when Marcus started speaking, I realized that there's something that has happened, and what was that? 197 million emails have got sent. Over 100,000 smart devices have got shipped. Over $1.6 million of monies have been spent online for e-commerce, and over 400,000 apps have got downloaded. I can go on and on. Over 3.8 million Google searches which have happened. I can just go on and on. The figures may just sound bizarre, but this is a reality. In 2021, this is the average of every minute activity that has happened on digital. The reality is that pandemic has changed the way we have been doing business, the way we have been looking at digital. It has not only got itself adapted in our lives, but it has truly become a way of life for everybody. You know, if you are not leveraging this platform, people are doing business. People may be talking about you, your brand, or maybe your competitors. But if you are not there, you are not in control. But don't take my word for it, dear audience. Let's hear it from the experts in the BFSI space, what's happening. And let's find out what you will not find in books and on the internet. Let's hear how these CMOs and these brand marketeers are using digital to create some powerful brand outcomes, leveraging data, orchestrating customer journeys, using social media, and whatnot, new technologies, etc., etc. I'm quite excited and I'm really looking forward to learn, unlearn, and absorb. But before we begin, my dear audience, I have a quick thing. We have a facility that you can get your questions answered by this esteemed panel. You can keep jotting down your questions, and if you don't have a question but you like some question, you can keep voting for it. And at the end of the session, what I can promise you is I'll try to get you some of these answered, which you can take back today from this discussion. So let's begin. And without much ado, let me put my first question to you, Sonia. How do you think digital has redefined customer experiences from end to end, especially in the current times?
Hi, Chetna. Thank you for the lovely start to the panel. And I think that's a question we all have been thinking about and answering for a while now at our workplaces, in our daily jobs, and when we're speaking to anyone. And it's a very pertinent question. So I have this very common analogy that I make. The customers can typically be divided into two segments. One is the digital immigrants, which would actually include most of us, right? People who are not born with mobile phones or not born with the internet available to us. So we've learned along the way to navigate, to purchase, to understand. And then there are the digital natives. They're born swiping, right? They go onto a screen. I mean, you see my son who's less than 10 years old, and that's all he does. He assumes everything is a touch screen, and life for him with digital interaction is very different than it is for me. Now, what has COVID, the pandemic, done to all of us? They've made digital a way of life. So everybody's really expedited their entire interaction with digital, conveniences, to say the least. So there was a time that you would have your parents who would not actually want to go online and purchase anything or make a payment. They were scared. Today, everyone's doing it. So the way I would look at this space is it's allowed us to go beyond the boundaries. Having said which, there are different customer segments. These customer segments and their comfort with digital is very, very different. Not every customer is the same. So, as marketers, one of the things that we need to do is think of our brand for different segments of customers in terms of who needs to be informed, who needs to be updated, who do we need to push to purchase, and who will come to us for service. So I'll just give you an example. Like, as a brand, India First Life, we're an insurance brand. We have to give comfort during a situation like a pandemic. So whether it's allowing for instant claim settlement, allowing for 24-hour claim settlement or updates is equally important, apart from purchase opportunity. So we've done a few things. Like, we launched a multilingual website because today, irrespective of where you are residing, you are now going to use digital as a platform. So multilingual website was very, very important for both information and purchase and service. We went and launched a campaign called Ghar Baithe Insurance, which allowed for customers to purchase or even connect for assisted purchase. So not everybody will go put in all their information or learn themselves. So you need both education, information, you need access, and you need a purchase point. So that's been a very critical aspect. I think as a brand, as marketers, we needed to think the entire customer journey. We could not only think of how do we attract the customer, we also needed to think of digital from an enablement point of view, which is what we did in terms of purchase points. And we also needed from a service point of view and comfort point of view, which we did with claims, we did with guarantees, and the like. So I think, yes, digital has completely changed the way we think. We have two sets of customers. We believe some of them are naturally inclined to digital, some of them who've just come on to digital, so they need a different level of information and push. I also think it's impacted the branding space, because virtual is now reality. We weren't really interacting on brand as much, so we did movie integrations on Netflix and the like. So I do think that the world has completely changed for the 360-degree customer journey, and I think the change is here to stay.
Absolutely, Sonia. Irrespective of where you are, digital enablement is important. Sheena, moving over to you, what do you think has been your biggest game changer for your brand, and how?
Hi. Let me break that up as a question for when you talk about game changer for a brand like Edelweiss Group. When I joined the group, which was a very large financial services conglomerate, almost about 6 years ago, the challenge before us really was about dealing with a financial services player, which is actually a homegrown indigenous brand, but it has enjoys a reputation and perception that it's actually an MNC, and which works actually wonderfully for us as well. But the challenge really was that even though we were a very diversified financial services conglomerate, the consumer's perception about the Edelweiss Group was probably, that story about, the blind men, five blind men holding which part of the elephant, whether it's the trunk or the tail, and depending on that was their perception. So pretty much, it was dominated as a B2B player. very strong in the capital market space, very strong in the broking space. And actually, when you look at the consumer spectrum that we actually catered to, it was humongous. And it's very fascinating that on one end of the spectrum, we cater to consumers who are UUHNIs, extremely wealthy, holding shareholder wealth. We cater to family offices and their wealth management solutions. You're talking the likes of, say, the Narayan Murthis or the Azim Premjis of the world who are sitting on thousands of crores of wealth to manage. And on the other end of the spectrum, we're also catering to one bhel puri vendors, standing in Kochi, who's looking for a affordable housing loan, literally at about 6 lakhs or 7 lakhs. And that's the straddle of consumer spectrum, that the group really caters to. And that was really what was fascinating, but also very challenging. The second aspect for us was that we were a challenger brand in most of our retail financial services, where we took any of the consumer segments of products, whether it was, mutual funds, home loans, business loans, broking, life insurance, general insurance. We were the late entrant, and yes, we kind of made our space, and we've made massive strides in a very short span of time. But as a challenger brand, for a marketer, that's a very key task and ask, a tall ask, well, to build a brand when you're competing with the big daddies of the world, right? And your budgets obviously are limited. You don't have very deep pockets like some of the big players who've been around and who have legacy of over 30, 40 years. So therefore, for me, really was using the levers, which were with the whole philosophy of the Edelweiss Group. And we use sports as an association. And not just sports. Within sports, most brands will, very intuitively gravitate towards cricket. But we took that as a very conscious call to actually associate with the alternative sports, as we call it, and the non-cricket platform. So that enabled us two things. One, it was not so cluttered. So you got to be able to build a brand awareness and reach and association. B, it wasn't so expensive from the marketing dollars in terms of, whether you were to sign on Virat Kohli's, you would have to lighten with multiple crores from your kitty. And here were the unsung heroes, so we chose Olympians because we said, here are the whole contingent of Team India who's going on to compete at the biggest platform of the world, Olympics. And we're the only brand in the country to actually have the long-term association of a 4-year-long partnership with the Indian Olympic Association as principal sponsors for Team India. Right from Olympics, Asian Games, Commonwealth Games, 2016 to right up to hopefully now 2021, which has gotten deferred from last year, Tokyo. And you would also wonder why a financial services brand is getting involved with Olympians and sports. What does that do for us? We're not the Adidas or Nikes of the world. And that's also a great fit because from an attribute, we are building synergy. So when you talk sports, they're the most inspirational, goosebumpy stories that you read and you watch, whether it's about perseverance, performance, championship, mutual respect, endurance. These are attributes that are great to have for a brand. Diversified, Olympics is diversified with multiple sports disciplines, so is Edelweiss. And we also catered in with the product, integration. So we also provided life insurance for the entire athletes, the entire contingent of 100 plus going, whether it was to Rio or Jakarta or wherever. We've also provided, health insurance to take care of their sports injuries and so on. And because for a, athlete, it's a very uncertain career. The third aspect we also took care, which was also very, in our DNA, was the whole wealth management. So for all the League A athletes, we actually took care of their wealth management, solutions. So you're talking Saina Nehwals of the world, Mary Coms of the world, who've been awarded with either tournament money or felicitation by the government. And we've helped them build their financial planning as the experts here. So that's been the game changer, I would like to say.
Oh, this is super interesting, Sheena. How ambassadors, partnerships, and providing some wholesome packages from end to end, probably digitally and across, was a game changer for you. So I was just wondering, and when I was listening to you both, I was just wondering that what goes behind brilliantly, doing segmentation brilliantly, targeting, profiling, engaging with customers, and probably much more. I think a lot of it is dependent on the data. Uh, Data and maybe much more. So we call it data, big data, micro data. There are so many terms which are being used these days in marketing. And I think a lot of our marketing success depends on how we interpret and analyze that data and how we use this data. So data is staple. But what are we doing with this data? And I really want to hear from you all. So, Neha, the next question is to you. How have you effectively used data for creating more powerful propositions and upping the customer experiences? Do you think lack of data or probably having incorrect data can impact your brand adversely?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chetna. And thanks to Sheena and Sonia. It was so wonderful listening to both of you and how you, being in the same space, are doing such different things, and your brands are so differently perceived, right? Data is very, very critical today. And since Chetna, you gave some interesting statistics, I'll also put out one statistics on data. It is said that 90% of the world's data since the beginning of time has been collected in the last 2 years, which means in the last 2 years, while we've been in the lockdown, we have had unprecedented shift to the virtual world. While there are geographical boundaries, we are moving to the virtual world. There are footprints and footprints that we are leaving in the virtual world. Right? We are clicking, we are tapping, we are swiping. Everything is getting collected somewhere, and that is the data that we're talking about. I mean, gigabytes and gigabytes of data. It's mammoth. What do we do with that as marketeers? I represent TECHVED. We help brands achieve their targets through the right branding and the right marketing and the right digital solutions. So how do we help our clients? How do we look at this data? Now, data, it's all a good story, right? It's all very nice theoretically saying that look at data and give a personalized experience, and all of that is all that we know. But data comes with its own qualms, and you mentioned one of them, which is inaccuracy. Inaccurate data can lead to really, and we've had some bad experiences with inaccurate data where we sent out emailers to a segment of people on a matrimonial site who had who had expressed interest and had been rejected by the people who had been expressed interest, and we said congratulations. So data sometimes kind of can really lead to bad moments when you go fast. So data accuracy is so important. The other thing, one of the challenges with data, and I'm sure all of you will agree because all of you belong to these mammoth companies where data lies in silos. So getting a 360-degree view of your consumer, collecting data from all the channels, streamlining it, and understanding your consumer is a really big challenge that we all face. So how do we get across that challenge? What we started doing is, the first thing we now do with the brand is, let's write down all that we need about the consumer. Let's create clear personas, whether it means, 10 personas, 20 personas, 200 personas, but let's have clarity. Only then do we start reaching out to the technology teams and saying, hey, we need this data. Because my experience is when you reach out to the technology teams and you tell them in parts and silos, I need this data, they usually have no answers. But if you give them a clear picture, make everybody sit and say, this is what I want about my consumer, it's easier to get data from all of those silos that exist there in their servers and wherever the data is. So that's one thing that is, one thing that has been my learning. The other thing is you need to know what kind of data you want. There's transactional data, there's behavioral data, there's social media data, there's customer servicing data. There's all kinds of data lying there. What is it that you want to do? Because what is it that you want to speak to your consumer? And how do you want to reach out to your consumer? So, for example, we've done a lot of campaigns and a lot of personalization for the insurance segment. And we realized that selling everything to everybody does not make sense. And I'm not talking of products. I'm not even talking of a health or a health or a life. I'm saying within life there are variants. Within life you will have something which is suitable for a family man who's 30-year-old with a certain income, and something else suitable for somebody else. Why don't we just focus on selling the right thing to the right guy? Why can my website not be a personalized menu card? Instead of giving him a Swiggy and saying you figure out what you want to eat, why can't I start telling him, hey, I know what you want? So I think there's a paradigm shift we've had in the past 2 years from trying to sell something to the consumer. We've moved to helping the consumer buy what he wants to buy. This is a big shift in both, right? I'm not selling anymore to you. I'm helping you buy what I know you want to buy. And that's what data allows you to do. The data allows you to understand what this consumer's like and what is good for him to buy. So those are some things that we've tried to do with a lot of BFSI clients, and we've been successful in many places. Recently, we worked with an insurance client where the campaign, the web experience, the mobile experience, multi-channel or omni-channel experience, where we only talk to the consumer about things that he will be interested in buying instead of giving him everything on the plate. And we see that the conversions have gone up, the leads have gone up. I believe the conversion for the leads have for sure gone up because we've been able to talk to him in the language and the needs that he has. But one thing of data of caution to everybody is regulatory body around it. We need to be very conscious of the data we are collecting and using because the norms and the regulations are changing by the day. I mean, the regulatory bodies and government policies are changing very rapidly because this data can be misused as much as can be used, right? So we all need to constantly keep an eye on that. What data can be used, to what levels, and in what way. So that's in a nutshell about data analytics in my
Absolutely.
work.
Absolutely, Neha. And I think, and apart from many others, you had raised one point where you said there are all kinds of data, transactional data, and social, etc., etc., etc. So clearly, unlike other industries and sectors, in BFSI we have a problem of plenty, and there is data overload. So, I would really love to know from you, Sheena, have you faced this problem of a data tsunami, and how have you sifted through the data to move it to your advantage, to use it to your advantage, and for brand building?
Right. So, I totally resonate with what Neha spoke about, as a marketer, and there's the whole big data, which, yes, we're all marketers, and whoever is listening in to this panel, will realize that there is a tsunami of data. And while there is an entire tectonic shift that has happened in terms of data consumption, generation, mining that data and trying to plow out actionable insights which are meaningful, which are relevant for you as a marketer. I think that's really where the challenge lies. Also, in terms of the whole learning curve for marketers is the MarTech platforms, I mean, technology, with the agile platforms. There's a lot that it, keeps changing and it's very dynamic. So trying to stay relevant, updated, connected, and especially for very large organizations, and marketers who are working in corporate functions with large corporations. And what Neha spoke about, that, data tends to be in silos. So trying to get one view of the customer. Hi, am I audible? This seems to be okay. Connections resume. Great. Right. So definitely that's a challenge. And while there is a data overload, I think first key ask, and that's how I approach it, is to really look at what are the insights you're looking to mine from the data, before just getting overloaded with data and charts and different kind of slices and dices. And really, if you break it down, the three types of data that a marketer really needs: customer relevant data, financial data, and operational data. So customer data is everything to do from demo, psychographics, CX journeys, acquisition, retention, behaviors, everything to do with the customer. Who is he, she, where does he live, eat, consumption habits, where are they really most amenable to your communication, and then trying to micro manage and target your campaigns to be able to get down to the specific customer that you want to identify and reach out to. The second is your financial data, which is really about monitoring your budgets, your expenses, looking at the ROIs, looking at the kind of media strategies and media plans, and within that you have a whole parameters, of the target cities, the demogs, the GRPs that you may want to be attaining, whether it's reach, awareness, affinity numbers, What are the ROIs you're looking at, from metrics, like I said, awareness, consideration, affinity numbers. You're talking about trial-ins, or you're talking about even attribution models. How much of marketing has really, contributed to the sales, which in itself is a big, a challenging ask from marketer and data perspective. The third, of course, is the operational data, which is all about campaign efficiencies, the logistics, the vehicles that you would reach out to. I think it's important first to identify what is your campaign objective, and what is it that you're looking to really measure yourself from a metric standpoint, and where you want to be able to showcase with whatever objectives you've set for yourself, short term, medium term, long term, that you want the needle to move. Whether it is on brand health scores, whether it's on customer acquisition scores, retention scores, loyalty scores, advocacy scores, whatever it is that you're looking to, monitor and measure yourself as a, metric that you keep for yourself for campaigns, and overall keeping your marketing goals in mind. I think keeping that end result in mind, and then looking at data and mining it, and trying to then really clean up the act so that you keep making it sharper and sharper, and then is all about just really systematically ensuring that it's operationalized.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And and that's how you train your eye and mind to really look at how your movement has happened. If you keep changing formats, or you keep changing your goalposts, you will never really be able to measure yourself and achieve commendable success. For any successful marketer, you have to set your goalposts right up front and measure that consistently to be able to get it. And the other thing that I'd just like to add here from a data perspective really is, from a consumer standpoint, is yes, the whole adoption of technologies. And there are some great technologies out there where they're looking at, CRM, Salesforce, Adobe's, Resultix of the world, but trying to really in terms of sharpening your own skills. That is one thing, but to always wear the marketer hat to be able to drive and derive actionable insights. I
Right. So I
think.
think while Sheena joins back, I would just kind of top up on the points that raised by.
Oh,
Guys,
Yes,
did
back.
you
Yeah.
lose me?
is Tina there? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Where did you guys lose me?
No,
No,
carry on,
that's
Sheena. I mean,
fine. That's
I'm,
fine.
Right. No, I was just saying that it's while you have a whole lot of technologies at play in the Salesforce, Adobe's of the world providing technology and platforms. I think the skill to really derive and drive actionable insights and wear a marketing hat, that will never go out of fashion. So that's one thing to
Absolutely.
always approach data with
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely,
lens.
Sheila. Absolutely. And you mentioned about the skill, and you mentioned about the goal post, and you also mentioned how the hows of achieving that. And you also mentioned that there are various techniques to analyze data that you can make use of. And as a marketer, it is extremely important that we leverage that. Predictive modeling, optimization, segmentation. These are some of these analytic techniques that a lot of marketers are using in the financial services space. So my next question is actually to you, Ishan, and probably the guy who brings diversity to this panel. Ishan, what can you share some insights on any data modeling, or can you give us any example for that matter, any technique or any use of data that you have made, for bettering your campaign ROIs, especially in the new age setups like today, which are purely digital.
Right, right. So thank you for the question, Chetna. And as I was mentioning, I mean, very valid points raised by the previous panelists with respect to their own journeys in the brand marketing overall, and how digital has played a key role. So I mean, interestingly, when we all were growing up, and I'm sure all the panelists and even the audience would be able to relate to that. So I mean, we did not typically grow up in an age where digital was big. So when I was growing up, most of the marketing, most of the branding that I experienced as a consumer was given to me via either these ATL channels, like your television ads, newspaper ads, radio ads. or sometimes it would be certain BTL techniques where it would be very very specific to certain cohorts or certain geographies. So there was nothing through the line which leverages the power of both the ATL and BTL, right? But I think that with the advent of internet and social media growing so big, I mean, it's typically acted as a game changer, not just for performance marketing and sales, but also for branding as a function overall, right? So I mean, typically from a data modeling standpoint, I would kind of carry forward the point that Sheena was mentioning. So I mean, data modeling by itself sounds like a very complicated terminology, or a very very hi-fi term. But just to break it down into simpler words. So I mean, let's say from a fintech lending standpoint, like credit bees. So essentially, there are multiple data sources for us, right? So we get the data about the consumer, even, I mean, at the moment of install itself, or at the moment of click, rather, on the ad click itself, or even if I go back, even at the impression level. So there's a lot of data that we get about the consumer from the attribution platforms, right? Which are typically the PIIs, that the digital coordinates that the user provides, or kind of puts forward on the internet. So now that is one source of data. Now, as and when they move forward in the platform, they provide a lot of data about themselves, and some of those data points, let's say a pan, so it would help us get certain other data points about the user, like their credit score, and the kind of loans that they have taken previously, and so on and so forth. Then as Sheena was mentioning about the operational data, right? So in the due course of the consumer journey, we are communicating to the user as well. So it's a two-way communication now, not just the user giving us the data about them, but we are also reaching out to the user. And every time we reach out to a cohort of users, the response that each of the user gives, or the kind of response that we get from each of the users, also differentiates each user from the other. So let's say, I reach out to, let's say, a set of consumers with three different communication channels, let's say an SMS, an email, and a push notification. So who responds to which communication channel at what time, in what aspect, right? So all those things also differentiate the consumer. So the data that we are looking at is not just the static data about the users that we get from different sources, but also the dynamic databases, the constant consumer interaction that we have. So if we are able to get the repository of all these data points, or all these data sources, into a single DB, or a singular, I would say a single repository, sorry, so to say, then I think marrying all of this data together and trying to use it in the most relevant and contextual way, as Neha was also mentioning, would be very, very useful, not just for the brand, because it will definitely help the ROI, because we are reaching out to the consumers with exactly what they are looking for. But also for the consumer, it will be a more relevant, a more relatable proposition, so to say, because it would typically be the persona that is as personalized as it gets, right? So that's probably going to be the overall, I would say, the fundamental building point of, or the fundamental building platform for any data modeling that we would want to do. And of course, you can use data points in multiple ways to derive multiple insights. But I would say that is the key. I would say that is the key way to go about using data in from a very very rudimentary standpoint, and then see where it takes you.
Okay, fairly interesting, Ishan, and actually very very insightful. Uh, and when I was listening to you, and of course to the other panelists, I realized that with so much of information and so much of data analytics, etc. And you also mentioned, Ishan, regarding the customer persona and the profiling. So, after doing all of this, then I think it becomes very natural for us to really catch the customers where they are, in the way that they want to be spoken with, wherever, in whichever way they want to be contacted, in whichever format they are comfortable with, like Neha also mentioned. And that brings me to a point that how are marketeers today orchestrating the customer journeys. For example, when I was launching the Citibank and Tata AIA partnership, Tata AIA partnership with Citi rather, one thing that we were cognizant about was that we were to establish not just the partnership and bring about the awareness, but also ensure that we move the customers from passive to active stage. And we realized that insurance as a category, people really bank on word of mouth. So there are different products, different categories. And here we realized that we need to influence the influencers as well. So we charted out a complete customer journey map, And we realized that there are different touch points and how we can make use of different channels, multi-channel marketing and omni-channels, that we could really create an impact in the market and then move on to bring about some fruitful results. So, my curiosity then arises, since Sonia is here, how important is it, Sonia, to understand the customer journey uh, from the perspective of consumers, how engaged you can get with the customers, and what role do you think digital has to play in it?
Thanks, Chetna. I actually completely agree with you when you mentioned the piece on, there's a channel difference that comes in and you also influence the influencer. So let me just step back a little and, let's think what happened last year. Uh, all channels, irrespective of how physically inclined they were, whether it's branch banking, whether it's any other channel agents, you name it today, they are all also digitally enabled. We had no choice, right? So you call them phygital channels, or there are different terminologies we use, but today everybody is digitally enabled. Now, what has that done for us as a brand? It's allowed us to have a single version of truth. I can have one beautiful version of truth which is customized for that channel's customers, rather than me customizing my version of truth for a channel. So my customer segmentation I can become sharper, and my the channels I use can become more focused for the end customer. So let me give you an example. We work with two very big banks, both are public sector banks, and we service 98% of the pin codes of India. So when I'm actually going to my customers, now I can talk, I customize the information, the tools, and the methodology based on the channel. So if I was to take my biggest distributor and biggest promoter, Bank of Baroda itself has various segments within it, right? So when I go through Bank of Baroda, we actually enabled them with a lot of digital tools for webinars. So we enabled them to reach out to their customers. The other thing that we realized is we were very heavily dependent on out of home media as a channel for branding. Now we had to go back and say, where do all my channel customers come? Whether it is Bank of Baroda, whether it's my direct to consumer customers who come onto my website, whether it's customers who come via agents, whether it's Union Bank of India, who's my other very, very critical partner, whether it's the regional rural banks. How do I reach out to these customers from a brand presence point of view, which is not physical anymore? Otherwise, these customers were physically inclined. So we did one thing. We actually tied up with a Netflix movie called Paglet. Okay, so it's a Hindi movie. It was based in UP. It is integrated to the point of being part of the story rather than just brand presence. And we actually managed to get brand presence as well as the importance of insurance, which for us as a category is a continuous updation. We continuously need to update on the importance of insurance for people to want to buy it. So we actually went digital, but we went to mass channels and we didn't do it through the regular ATL routes. That is one aspect that we could actually pick up for our channels. Now, that is when the customer is not captive, right? This is when the customer is a regular prospect. Now, let's talk about captive customers. Here, what we did is we did a lot. Our engagement went 3x in terms of we actually sliced and diced. We used data. We actually reached out to customers in 10 different languages, where we started new newsletters. We enabled them to come on to us on our platforms, as well as redirected them to our feet on street and distributors who were now digitally enabled. So while they were physical channels, they were digitally enabled, and we did air cover and outreach centralized, which was not something we did so proactively and so regularly till the pandemic hit us. So I think this is a real new normal, right? Because now you are supporting B2B2C centrally and customized and hyper personalized. So I think that's been a fantastic movement. And last but not the least, I really want to talk about the power of actually taking feedback and testimonial, right? Uh, Digital has actually enabled us to go to our customers, get the voice of customer instantly, and have instant gratification in terms of service recovery. So if a customer at the end of any service point tells us that they're not too happy with that service point, we can actually jump right back in. We can call them or even digitally communicate with them over chat and say, what happened? Why did you not give us a great rating here? And then he says, I was not too happy here. And we said, okay, you didn't get this receipt on time. Don't worry, I'll give it to you. We call them back. We say, did you receive the receipt? Is it accurate? And we can do a service recovery, which is extremely immediate. So I think actionable insights is a huge factor that has actually got enabled thanks to digitalized processes beyond purchase. I mean, branding and purchase is obviously the first step we all take. But I think the end to end customer journey has become very enabled, including service recovery and testimonial, which was not so instant, so immediate, and so brilliant as it is today with the digital journeys coming in.
Absolutely, Sonia. And while I was listening to you, I recalled one particular instance. Of course, I'll spare you all the story. But what came to my mind was in how beautifully you mentioned the way you embedded the movie and how you tried to embed in different languages and how it was embedded in the lives of the consumers and the importance of testimonials, etc. I think using multiple channels, you could reach out to your customers. Very curious to know from you, Neha. How have you used different channels, or rather, omni-channel, the mystery that we call omni-channel marketing across the customer life journey? How do you think you have really used it across the digital? How has digital been leveraged for a brand uplift? If you have some examples, that will be great.
Remembering the customer in whichever channel we choose. So which means when it comes to the brand, it's very interesting what customer instead is completely changing. It's more about what she does with a brand on the desktop versus mobile versus Netflix versus in within with our store. It's also one brand influencing the other brand. So, we got interesting case study which happened sometime back when Queen's Gambit came and suddenly the Amazon sales of Texas went up. So we know there is this, the Netflix Queen's Gambit that we learned. Queen's Gambit is from chess and it's very interesting. It's all about chess. And Amazon sold 40% more chessboards in that month. And the Google searches on how to play chess skyrocketed by more than 100%. So there's integration of different brands and stories which we need to keep the eyes and ears open on. It's not just what my user is doing on my brand across channels, it's also what's going on in the ecosystem that I can leverage and can start using on different channels. So there's multiple things. So plus there's this term, the Bokus thing.
Uh,
Sorry, can you hear me, Chetna? I can't see it.
You're not very clear, Neha. You're not very clear.
Oh, okay. I just changed place because I thought I was not here
No, no,
there.
it's much better
There was
now.
a network
Please go on.
problem.
Please go on. Can hear
Yeah.
you now.
So I'll try to be louder.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there is a term that we know, which is BOPUS, which is buy online and pick up on store. So that's another thing that we need to be aware of that people have started doing. The BOPUS behavior has come in, which means that if he's buying online and he's not just picking up on the store, he's sometimes picking up at the petrol pump, he's sometimes picking up at a geo center. So, how is my presence across in all of these channels? That's also become a story of omni-channel. So, omni-channel is not just digital channels; it's physical channels, and we need to see how to combine all of these now. And one of the strategies that we've seen that has got adopted is the mobility strategy. That is that how do you on when your user is on the go, he's mobile. How do you leverage his mobile phone to be able to give him the right message at the right time at the right place? So all these three things become very, very important as a strategy. We've also used for one of a very boring brands, which was a stationery brand. We've increased engagement many, many folds by using these strategies. We're dealing with kids there, and you can't tell kids to just buy stationery. How do you engage them? So using mobile phone gamification, micro games, engagement has led us to kids loving the stationery products. So it was also about creating awareness. I know stationery is like a little different from BFSI, but it was also about creating awareness in the user's mind. Hey, why is this pencil better than this pencil? Or why is this crayon better than this crayon? And what better than doing a gamification trying to tell this to them?
Sorry, I'm interrupting. Can others please put themselves on mute because I think there's some disturbance.
So, as an insurance company, also it's important today to use the mobile phone to leverage on his lifestyle. Can I know from his mobile how healthy is he? Can I know his driving? How does he drive? Can I use that data for my insurance claims, for my insurance premium? Can I start combining his lifestyle that I get from various channels into the product that I'm giving him? Can these both be combined? These are some things that we're looking at, and they're working very beautifully because it's not. I don't think mobile is only about risk assessment today. It's much more than that. It's about giving meaningful proposition, or BFSI. Sorry, insurance is not just about risk assessment. It's about giving him a meaningful proposition, which is just the right proposition on various channels that he is. So, that's one of the takes. I know you asked for some examples, but we have such strict confidentiality, Chetna, that we can't talk about most of them here.
No,
Uh,
no worries at all. Of course, we
next one
understand.
of one. Yeah. So that's my take on omni-channel, where you can understand him on various channels, physical, digital, give him the right messaging, and also give him a value proposition, which is beyond what you're selling, beyond what you're selling to what he wants.
Right, right, Neha. So what you are trying to say is that we reach out to the customer uh, multiple times in different ways. So if he's not opened a mail, then we reach out through a message, and then we reach him on social wherever he is, and we make use of mobile, etc. I think absolutely, it definitely makes sense. So, so great, Neha. And I'll move on for my next question to Sheena. But before I do that, I would like to urge the audience to keep sending in the questions. I hope you're sending the questions or you're voting for the questions that you like so we can get those addressed through this wonderful and distinguished panel. So, moving over to you, Sheena, I was very, very curious to know. You mentioned about COVID earlier, and what others have been talking, how it has completely changed the way we are looking at things, right? So, what are some of the most important learnings or insights that you have, which you have applied in the so-called faltered customer journeys now, and how have you really turned the things in your favor using digital?
Um, you know, I I don't know whether you can turn something like a unless you were really, a farmer or a hospital or a healthcare company. Am I audible?
Can we hear Sheena?
You can hear me?
Okay, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. I'm saying, I'm not sure whether turning it into our favor in the whole pandemic situation is probably not very appropriate. But yes, okay. So, obviously the COVID is a black swan event for the entire globe. Okay, and what that really means is it's something that nobody anticipated, and it has, I think, forced organizations worldwide to you know get onto and accelerate their digital journeys, their technology advancements and adoption, and adapting to it. Both. It's not just adopt but also adapt. And I think that is what COVID has forced organizations to do. In fact, I think on the lighter side and on a lighter note, I think organizations today realize that work from home is probably not such a bad policy, and productivity doesn't get hampered. Despite employees and 90% or 100% of them working from home or from anywhere, from that matter. Coming to our own examples, I think from a learning insight perspective, one, like I said, it forced us to accelerate our technology journey, and we were already up the curve. So for us, literally, for a group as large as us, over 13,000, 14,000 employees, 90% of them within 2 weeks of the lockdown being announced last year, we were all completely, seamless and on laptops and working from home remotely and across the country. The second thing, that it forced us to do, and more from a marketer brand speak, was really about adopting communication strategies which were a lot more empathetic, not in your face, a lot more sensitive, a lot more socially relevant, because we realized this is the time to actually be sympathetic and empathetic, to employees and customers at large. And the whole dark forces and the gloomy faces, that we were all, gripped with, and, battling and continue to do that even today. With the second wave, it's just wreaked havoc on the economy all through. So I think given that, we actually, and again, something very, dear to our hearts, it was a very small, but a meaningful, large step. What we actually enterprise called Hak Darshak. And we realized that the worst hit was the whole community of, the underprivileged, the migrants, the domestic health, right? The people around us, whether it's your watchmen, your maids, your drivers, they're the ones who actually were the most affected when the whole lockdown was, announced, and the whole, when the economy really took a downward spiral. So what we did was we partnered with this social enterprise, and we said we will, and to my knowledge as well, it was a complete shocker. We all have heard of Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojanas and some other Jan Dhan accounts. There are a lot of these government schemes available, but what I'm pretty sure none of us know or knew was that there are over 10,000 such government schemes available. And the pity is that this is not even known to us, let alone to the ones who it's actually meant for. So we actually partnered with this social enterprise. We created a portal called Help Your Health. We actually shortlisted, curated these government schemes. We bucketed them under 5 different buckets of financial health, women, child empowerment, documentation, domicile, just so that our consumers, which is people like you and me, could actually enroll and help our domestic health and make it very easy. It was a complete do-it-yourself. So that was like a very small, but like I said, very relevant, empathetic, and a socially relevant and responsible content and engagement that we wanted to reach out and walk the talk as a brand. We've, from a marketing standpoint, business standpoint, last year, despite it being a COVID situation, we have actually managed to launch multiple products, whether it was, and I think Neha touched upon this earlier. We actually launched a motor insurance policy called Switch, and it was completely digital enabled, which is with the whole digital first approach of the Edelweiss General Insurance, especially. And we launched this entire motor insurance policy completely digital in the midst of the lockdown in May 20. Last year, we also launched 2 alternative asset funds. And these are again targeted at HNIs and some of the institutional clients. But you're talking about structured products on hedge funds. We've launched 2 of them in the last year. And we've managed to get traction for all these products. Our thought leadership, which are some of our big IPs, where we've catered to, foreign international investors, investee companies. I'm talking over 3 days, where you've booked the Hayats of the world and you've booked 60 different rooms to get investing companies with investors, and trying to broker that entire conference. We've done 2 of those conferences last year, completely online, completely seamless. attended by 1,500 plus corporates, and it's not just a one-to-one. The beauty of that was that we actually had separate breakout rooms. So you had your main track session with the panelists and speakers, but you had parallel sessions which were closed door events with prior registration, with KYCs, which were running in parallel. All it was enabled with technology. So yes, we had to come up the learning curve, but we realized that it was a beautiful way to actually mirror the offline physical experience that our customers were used to and bring it online. From a learning perspective, really, Chetna, if I have to qualify it, I think, given the data, given the CX, given COVID, there are certain tectonic shifts in behavior that have happened, which has changed the
Absolutely.
DNA of
Absolutely.
the consumer. And
You're
that
right.
would continue to remain. Whether
Absolutely.
it's wellness, healthcare, whether it is your consumption on OTT media
Ab-
platforms.
Absolutely. And
There
the
are
leaders
three.
today are definitely making use, and they're looking at the glass which is half full, and trying to leverage and make use of this not so positive situation and create something which can be meaningful and create some positivity and some
Yes,
simplicity,
yes.
right? And so just being cognizant of the time, I think we had a lot of things to talk about, but I think now we'll probably move over to the Q&A, because I think we got all of us have had, at least I have thoroughly enjoyed this session. And I would really love to hear what our audience needs to know from us and from our panel. So, Marcus, I would request you to read out, the question. Uh,
Absolutely. So I think in the feed, firstly, the first question is, hi Chetna and fellow panel members. Is there a science or a perceived strategy that marketers use to create an emotional connect to build a supreme brand experience? So that's one question that's there.
Right. So, I mean, let me take a stab
Thanks,
at it.
thanks, Marcus. Neha, would you like to
Yeah,
go?
Ishan. I think Ishan, yeah, if you could take this
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. So I'll just
Or
quickly share
Ishan?
my
Okay,
thoughts,
sure,
and then
Ishan. Yeah.
probably would love to hear others ideas on the same as well. So yeah, I mean, on the overall brand strategy, when you talk about creating an emotional connect, so I would take a cue from what Sonia was mentioning in her experience of very recently, kind of connecting with people across different channels, across different touch points. So see, one thing we have to understand from a branding standpoint is that it's not just your stakeholders, and branding is not just your end consumers, right? They're just one of the stakeholders. You have to also take into account your employees, you have to take into account your shareholders, your partners. So it's an integrated approach, not just with respect to the channels, but with respect to the end audience, right?
Right.
So when you talk about creating an emotional experience, what is very important is to look at branding not just as a communication channel, but also as a distribution and service channel. So for instance, on the same point, that when, let's say, a consumer comes to your platform and they give a particular feedback, maybe it's on a review box on your product. Let's say on Credit we have a review box where
Right.
people can give us a direct feedback on how they found the experience overall. Or let's say if they go to the Play Console or the Play Store rather and give us a certain feedback, or let's say reach out to us on social media, right? So basis the feedback that we get from across these channels, both the ones that we own and the ones that are third party channels, we try to understand what exactly is the consumer's overall feedback and what are the larger pain points that they're facing across the journey. And the idea is to solve them at the right time in the right way. So I mean, those things are very very key when you try to kind of create a good experience, because it's not as complicated as we think it is, right? I mean, we can
Right.
we can talk about a lot of buzzwords and a lot of end of the day, what's important is to just keep things simple. Try to understand your consumer and the other stakeholders, specifically consumer, because they form the largest pool, to understand what their pain points are. Try to simplify it, try to identify the solutions, communicate to them, solve it for them. And then I think with all these things falling into place from across different channel touch points, I think that in itself will create a huge emotional connect. And I don't think it's really as complicated as we think it is.
All right, Ishan. And the last question, which I would like to take, I think the last one makes sense. Speaking about data, what are the critical data points marketers need to map in order to get actionable insights about their consumer?
And leave it open, whoever wants to pick it up.
I think Sheena had categorized it very well. Sheena, do you want to Visit that, I heard you categorize into transactional data, no, operational data, behavior data, and one more. I thought that categorization was
In
lovely.
short, if you can keep it in 2 minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Neha. So, okay, the way I classify the marketing data, and which is true for most marketers really, you have three buckets essentially when you look at data. One is the customer data, which is everything to do with the customer, who he or she is, demo, psychographics, behavioral traits, everything that you'd want to right down to the granular requirements. The second is your financial data, which is from your campaigns, your budgets, your media plans, your ROIs. What are the attribution, what are the revenue contribution, what are the kind of numbers that have grown, what is the impact on the business really from a marketing lens. And the third is your operational data, which is really on the operational efficiencies and effectiveness, and to be able to, really customize your campaigns and data efficiency using a lot of technologies, algorithms, and that's where Malai comes in, which is machine learning and artificial intelligence, really. That's what we call as Malai. So yeah, that's really where it's getting to. Um, and of course, don't forget that it all starts with what the objective is, what are the actionable insights that you're looking to
Absolutely.
really mine.
All right. So we're running out of time. We've almost touched an hour. Thank you so much, panel members, for this exciting panel discussion. I hope the audience has got the much needed insights that they needed from the top CMOs from India. Thank you so much. And we'll to all our viewers, very quickly, we'll be joining you all shortly with another exciting panel discussion, which speaks on the future of the BFSI, digital insurance, insurtech, and contact centers. We'll be joined by Ms. Neha, who's there as a moderator for that session. So please stay tuned and we'll join you shortly. Thank you so much to our panel members once again. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you,
having you all.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you
Bye
very much,
bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.